Welcome to Squirrel, the podcast for distracted writers, hosted by Candace J. Thomas and Jody L. Milner.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Squirrel. This is Candace.
This is Jody.
And welcome to our episode 23, where we're going to talk about the Winter Solstice.
Yay!
Ooh, that's my spooky noise for...
I don't know. This is not spooky.
Well, it's mystical, is it not?
Mystical, sure. Not spooky.
Well, maybe I'm thinking pagan, and so I just get witch or Wiccan or whatever.
We didn't even get close to the Krampus. Come on. The videos are awesome. Look them up.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, we are talking about the solstice today. Our winter solstice this year is going to be on the 21st, I believe. And that marks the longest night of the year, which when I was a kid, it didn't make sense to me because I'm like, why add more hours to night? But now, because it's a 24-hour clock, right?
Well, and as a kid, you don't really realize that the sun changes throughout the year.
Yeah.
And you're like, why are they turning off the lights earlier? I mean, I don't think it registers until you're an adult and you're like, I'm commuting and it's dark and I hate it.
Yes, when I get out of work, it's dark and it makes me sad. But anyway, so the 21st is the longest night of the year, and that marks basically the beginning of winter, but also that the sun will be coming back, as our Earth goes around the sun. What I'm most curious about is the ancient cultures that would celebrate this winter solstice. And there's a lot of different cultures. And what I feel that they celebrate the mark of time or some kind of feast to bring in like a new year or something like that. I mean, I really fell down a deep tunnel when researching this. So I gave Jody the task of doing a quick rundown of the solstice, please.
Alrighty. And I should mention before I dive in is the whole reason we want to do this is a lot of alternate world fiction needs to have its own cultures. And many of these cultures will have a lot of the cultures and traditions that have cropped up on Earth. And one of the big ones, and this is something that has been around since man has looked to the sky and looked for patterns. Having an observance of the solstice or the equinox is something that's so easy to add into your fiction to give it this depth and this richness that it shows that you've paid attention in school. And it also shows that you want to make your world feel really real. And so this is one of those things you could add to your fiction, some sort of solstice or equinox celebration.
Well, that's a good point. I like that. Okay.
I thought so.
Yeah, I do. I love that.
I'm so glad you agree with me. So they have found evidence of solstice celebrations dating as old as the Stone Age. They found one that they dated back to 10,200 BC. That is when Neolithic man was wandering around and painting in caves. This is back before they've discovered how to smelt metals. They found evidence of these solstice celebrations, and so there are a couple monuments that they've found that help them with this research. Yes. And we're going to talk in depth about some of these, but I'm just going to drop the names here. So two of the places that come up when you research solstice celebrations, especially really old ones, is Newgrange in Ireland, and I'm probably going to say this wrong, the Maeshowe in Scotland. Scottish people, feel free to correct me. These are both monuments that are aligned with such precision to the solstices that they could not be mistaken for any other reason.
Yeah.
It's very, very cool.
So cool.
One of the oldest celebrations that most people have heard of is the pagan celebration of Yule. This is a celebration where they celebrate the return of light and warmth, and we draw a lot of our current day traditions from Yule.
That's cool.
And so I think we're going to go into depth of all of this in a little bit. But some of those that you'll recognize is like the use of evergreens to decorate, mistletoe, candles, caroling, parties, gift giving, and burning. I mean, for Yule, it was traditionally the Yule log, but having a very cheery fire in the fireplace, you can thank Yule.
The light that you put on your TV when you're opening presents.
Oh, you do that too.
Of course.
It's so convenient.
Of course I do.
Well, in my poor fireplace, when you light it every year, it has all the dust that needs to burn off, so it just smells really bad.
That you should probably do that more often than just Christmas morning.
Sure.
Just saying. I'm pointing out, so solstice is derived from the Latin words of sol, which means sun, and cistern.
My Latin's not great, but I would say sisteri.
Sisteri.
Again, Latin people, feel free to correct us.
Sistere. I'm going to say that. Sistere.
And I'm going with Team Sisteri.
That's perfect. Fine. So what it means is the day the sun stood still is basically how you can read it. So that's why we have two, because that's when the sun starts. When we hit that point in our rotation where we're standing still.
Well, and if you are watching the sun in the sky, there is an arc that it follows. I mean, there's the east to west arc, but there's also a north to south, how far it falls in the sky, how low it stays in the sky, where, like, if you watch it, the winter solstice it's at its lowest point of being in the sky, and then it will start going up higher and higher and higher until you get to the middle of the top of the sky, which is the equinox.
Gotcha. That's awesome. So the solstice, the other thing I wanted to point out, talking about that is how it measures time. And a lot of ancient cultures used the solstices as a marker of the new year coming through, or of the harvest, so they knew exactly when to predict, doing their gathering.
And we could go into a fascinating thing about zodiac signs here too, because that's another way they would mark time, as if the sun would set within a certain constellation or rise within a certain constellation. That would mark where in the harvest cycle they were. And that's hugely fascinating. We should write that down as an idea.
That would be really fascinating.
Hang on, jotting it down.
Okay. So in talking about some of the solstice traditions around the world, I fell in a deep rabbit hole in looking through the ones that I know and celebrate. What did you find, Jody?
So I already talked about the pagan celebration of Yule, but the other one that comes up quite often when you talk about solstice celebrations is Saturnalia. Saturnalia is a Roman festival, and it's also really closely linked to our celebration of Christmas. And so when they were celebrating it, it would represent the end of the planting season. It would be a celebration of abundance and like they say liberation. During Saturnalia, the slaves that they kept would be allowed a few days of relative freedom. They wouldn't have to work. And so they would celebrate that. The word Saturnalia comes from Saturn, which is the Roman god of agriculture, as well as prosperity and freedom. This festival was celebrated with feasting. Okay, you're going to recognize a lot of these qualities because, hey, we do them too. Feasting, exchanging, this is a really, really cute one, exchanging wreaths of holly for good luck.
Oh, that's lovely.
And then they would decorate trees with metal. Like, it was small metal ornaments. They found these in archaeological digs.
Okay.
And so they're like, that is the earliest note of people decorating trees for the observance of a holiday.
That's interesting. What kind of trees do they have? Olive
trees? They did not mention what the trees were. They don't have pine trees.
Do they have pine trees?
They do have evergreen trees. They're not necessarily pine. They probably have more cypress.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. One of the things that I found interesting about different cultures is the luminaries. Luminaries. That they're like the little candles that are in different bags, and they have like different symbols on the bags. And this was a mix of different cultures. So you could find this a lot of in like tribal traditions, like the Hopi. They celebrated the solstice as well, but when the Catholic missionaries came over, that mixed some of the cultures. So you can see it a lot around other Catholic buildings, these luminaries that are just marching all around the cathedrals and whatever, but it it's a mixture of those cultures together. So you can find a lot in California or in Ireland, a lot of New Mexico. I know that they have a big luminary festival there in New Mexico and Albuquerque. So that's one of the things that I found fascinating was the mix of cultures there.
I love that. And I've seen, like, even here, they have the Luminaria celebration at one of our, there's a big garden that you can visit.
I don't even know.
It's at a location called Thanksgiving Point, but they have a winter festival every year called Luminaria. And one of the big attractions is they have a field that's about 4 football fields big. It's massive. And it's got thousands of luminaries on it. And they're all synced to color, light, and music.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so it's really cool.
Wow. Wouldn't the Hopi be so proud
They
about
would.
that? Oh my gosh.
I'm sure they would love it. But you also see it like during church services where they'll cut out the symbols on the paper bags and they'll put the sand and the candles in there, I think.
Yeah.
And it's just really nice. And then the bags fall over and then things light on fire.
Yeah. Lots of fun.
I mean, fun for everybody. So today, there are still a couple of these solstice festivals that have continued on from these historic roots. And one of these is the festival of Santa Lucia, or St. Lucy's Day.
Yeah, and I was going to mention that because I have Scandinavian roots.
You definitely do.
And I swear I wrote it down here, and then I looked and it wasn't in my notes.
It's like on page 2.5.
Was it?
It's still there.
Okay.
But I got to it first, so
Go for it.
This is now meant to honor the Christian martyr, Saint Lucia, or Lucia. But it was also adopted from earlier solstice traditions from the Norse. The big iconic thing that they do during this festival is the young girls will wear white dresses with red sashes, and they will wear a wreath of candles on their head.
And the wreath of candles, I remember seeing, like, I don't know, that's one of those marks of Christmas that you see still, like, in movies or like Christmas Carol. I remember seeing that kind of thing. So it's something that I know of.
And I had a neighbor growing up that they would actually observe this every year. And it fascinated me because it was something that was outside of my normal. And I was really interested in it. But part of me was just like, oh, I don't belong to that. Mm-hmm. But I'm also part Scandinavian, so says my genetic results. So I can wear. I do not look Scandinavian.
No, you don't
at all.
You should go with like your Celtic roots. I
can go celebrate.
Yeah, you can
British
celebrate
Isles,
Yule and whatever.
All over the place.
I also found it interesting about I want to say Shabe Yalda. That's the best thing I could say, and that's a celebration in Iran. And I work with a woman who was originally from, like, her homeland is Iran, and every, like, Christmas season she would bring in pomegranate seeds, and she'd, like, season them with mint, and oh my goodness, they were like, they're the yummiest things in the whole world. But I didn't realize that had any kind of significance tied to the solstice in any way. I mean, why would I think that? But they do a celebration tied to the solstice called Shab-e Yalda, or the longest night of the year, and we eat pomegranate seeds.
I wonder if that has any tie to the myth of Persephone.
Maybe, possibly.
Because that's iconically a pomegranate seed.
Yeah, she ate 6 pomegranate seeds, and then that's why we have 6 months of, like, she's in, I don't know,
so
hell
6 months of the sadness
before spring comes again. So everyone listen to Hadestown. Okay.
There you go.
All right. So what do you find most mystical about the solstice?
It's weird. I think the further we push into what we call modern life, the more detached we become from, the movements of the stars and the moon and paying attention to stuff like this. And so having Christmas and the Christmas holidays fall around the solstice, it kind of helps bring us back to hopefully also remembering the light will come back. There is hope, there is rebirth. And so I kind of love the season for that reason, that even before man had science to understand why the sun moved the way it did, or if the earth was flat or round, or how everything worked together, they still looked at the sky and wondered and thought about it and marked the time with it. Like, it's really cool.
I was really fascinated by the whole, it's the, the solstice being the clock of the earth, basically. And it brought me back to world building and fantasy and understanding your world and how it is revolved around the clock. I know a lot of the times we put in seasons or different things into our own fantasy. The thing I fell down, the rabbit hole I fell down was with Newgrange Temple in Ireland. And this is where it was discovered. Like, it was just like a mound. They discovered this temple.
Like most good archaeological finds, it was a pile of dirt.
Yeah, where you find all these mounds and then there's a ship under there or something like that, And so they found this temple, and it's neat. It's like a big dome in the ground, but it has specific openings that during the solstice you can capture a amazing light through this tunnel, and it only happens for like 17 minutes during the solstice, but it happens like December, I want to say 17th to 21st, something.
They'd only be a couple of days it would work.
Yeah, and it's only in the morning, and so people have really gathered. They have to do a lottery in order for people to go see it because it's so popular now. But please, everyone, Google it. It sounds completely amazing. And they registered it that it was about 5,200 years old. So that's 3,200 BCE, something like that. So that is before the pyramids were built. If you want to mark time there to understand how old this is. And it's
you said 1,000 years before Stonehenge, too.
Yes, it's 1,000 years before Stonehenge. And I thought Stonehenge was like the oldest thing, but it's 1,000 years. If you can think about what was happening 1,000 years from today, that was like
the Dark Ages.
Dark Ages. So that's a huge amount of time between just those two things.
We invented indoor plumbing.
Oh my gosh.
It's amazing.
So many things, so many fascinating things have happened since this. But I was completely entranced by this idea that these people marked the time with this temple dedicated to the solstice. It was crazy. What else did you discover in your research?
Well, the thing that came back time and time again, and I'd look at the pagan celebrations, and I'd look at Saturnalia, and I looked at a couple other ones, but how similar their celebrations are, even though they're separated by thousands of miles. Like, most of them have some form of evergreen. Most of them use some kind of fire, candles. Most of them have feasting and celebrating and gift giving, and they show up again and again and again, showing that mankind comes from common stock.
Yeah.
We keep coming back to finding the same symbols and the same things, no matter where we are on the planet. And I just thought that was really cool.
That is super cool. I want to talk just briefly about Stonehenge, because that was another fascinating thing I found, that there was a big gathering at Stonehenge. So modern revelers taken it up the tradition, gathering at dawn the day after the longest night to witness the magical occurrence of the sun rising through the stones. So, and it gets rather crowded, I believe, but it's free.
I'd imagine it would. But yeah. I hear that most people who visit it, they're like, it's literally 20 feet off of this just road that's just randomly there. Like, it's not even a tiny road. It's a biggish road.
Yeah, I know.
So a lot of people are like, there's these other henges that are actually more isolated and cool. So if you like doing that kind of historical travel,
that is neat.
Educate yourself.
There you go. Very cool. What kind of folklore stories did you find that are centered around the solstice?
I want to share a really dumb example. It's so dumb, I love it.
Okay.
It's not folklore, and it's definitely not a tradition, but Doctor Who celebrates the solstice in one of the episodes. It is it's the Christmas Carol episode.
Which doctor is that?
It's Matt Smith.
Okay.
Matt Smith and Amy Pond and Rory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I think
And
I remember this actually.
It's a good one. They've got the sharks that swim through the sky.
Oh, okay.
That one.
Yes. Okay.
It's season 6, episode 0. And it is a Christmas celebration, but they never actually talk about Christmas. They talk about coming halfway through the dark. Okay. And I love that phrase, halfway through the dark. It's just lovely. It's poetic. It's perfect. Mm-hmm. It's hopeful, where it's just like we're almost there. We've gotten through the worst part.
Yeah.
Of course, where we live, the worst snow comes about 6 weeks after the worst part. That's when you get the ones that sock you in for a couple of days.
Yeah, that's true. I found a bunch of different just mythological stories about the Holly King and the Oak King. And that is in a book that I just read called The Wren and the Holly Library, and that's by K.A. Lindy. And it does focus on the Holly King specifically being the power of the Holly King grows in power when it's darkest. So that's where the solstice is where he's most powerful, where the Oak King has the most power at the solstice in the summer. And so it's just the waning of those two seasons, basically. It was a lovely story. And the Holly King is also as seen by some like neo-pagans as his like a prehistoric forebear of Father Christmas. So it's to give you an idea, because he's got a wreath of holly.
I've seen that depicted in pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Very cool.
Do you celebrate any of these traditions, or are you looking to do that?
You know, I would love to reintroduce the idea of celebrating the return of the light, or the renewal of life into my end of year celebrations, because usually we get kind of bogged down by what feels like the required holidaying. You know, you have to go and travel to X, Y, and Z people, or else they get angry at you for the rest of the year. There's required number of special dinners you have to go to, whether it's work or also family or whatever, places you want to visit, movies you need to see. Like, all of that hustle and bustle feels like just keeping busy while the time passes, but actually sitting and taking time to respect the closing of one era and the opening of another just seems really lovely.
Yeah, I wish I'm going to need to do some more research, because I agreed with you. I absolutely want to celebrate this renewing of a year, but I don't know how to do it yet. I will look through and see what traditions I can pull up. Okay, so my ending thought here is I just fall down your own rabbit hole, I guess. Look for the traditions that are intriguing about this cycle, this calendaring of the coming of the light, or the end of the darkness and coming into the light. I think it's symbolically, it has a beautiful metaphor, and I really like it. So I want to use more of these myths that I found in my writing if I can. So that's what I'm looking forward to. What about you?
Definitely. I want to write a winter story just to add some sort of solstice celebration.
I love snowscapes.
Because it would be really nice. So I think all you writers out there, and I said this before, but I'm going to rephrase it. If you are building a world and plan on your story taking place over a solstice, whether it be the summer or the winter, just adding some sort of tradition makes sense. And hopefully we've given you some pretty darn good ideas about different things you can do to celebrate.
And your listener assignment really is just to search out some of the folklore about the solstice that you may or may not know. Something a little bit more, go into some ancient civilizations, see how other places have celebrated this, and see if anything inspires you.
Excellent.
Tell us about us in our next episode, Jody.
Well, we are definitely in our final Christmas countdown.
Bum, 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 bum.
And this is going to be our next episode's episode 24. It falls on like 2 days before Christmas. And we're going to bring back the Christmas quiz show because Candy and I love having fun, and it's really fun for us to do.
I cannot wait for this.
So As always, we have a Patreon and a Buy Us a Coffee. If you've liked anything you've heard today, if you have appreciated it or gotten a laugh, we would love your support. And as always, like, subscribe, and share.
Thank you, guys.
And happy solstice.
Yes.
All right. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Squirrel Podcast for the Distracted Writer with Candace J. Thomas and Jody L. Milner. Please like and subscribe to our podcast for updates and new episodes, and find more information at our website, squirrelpodcast.com. Stay distracted, everyone.
But the two really old ones that that come up the most when you research this is,
Oh my God.
your phone falling on the floor.